everyone, in today's video I'm going to be doing a illustration of a barn owl, and I'm going to be using the Inktense, Derwent Inktense paint pen set for the background, and I'm going to be using the Procolour color pencils from Derwent for the owl itself. So I'm starting off with a sketch with my graphite pencil. I'm using a regular graphite pencil, HB. All the supplies I'm using will be listed in the description box below if you're interested. And I am using a larger sketchbook. This is an A4 size sketchbook. Now I'm looking at my reference photo and basically just getting the entire bird onto, or the entire owl onto the paper, getting his outlines, the placement of the beak, the eyes, the feathers, the direction of the feathers, the length of the feathers, all of that I'm getting onto my paper, and I'm also just getting the proportions as accurate as possible according to my reference photo. So this takes a bit of time, and it's very important for you to have this done as accurately as possible, because the longer you take on this stage, the better your piece is going to look, because you're really going to get those drawing or get that initial sketch really accurate, and proportions are going to be accurate as well. So you'll be able to represent the animal better, and the animal will look realistic and three-dimensional. If you have, for example, the eyes in the wrong place, it's not going to look very three-dimensional, and it's going to look it's going to show. No matter how well you do the coloring, it's going to show at the end. So it's very important to just make sure your initial sketch is as accurate as possible, and that helps to really study your reference photo. So now what I've done is, once I was done with the sketch of the owl, I started working on the background. So I wet the paper with the brush. I'm using the Inktense paint pen set, and I've just wet the paper. This paper can take wet media as well. It's for ink, but it does take a certain amount of wet media as well. And I'm using a hairdryer to dry in between layers, just so that I can also flatten out the paper and I don't get a lot of warping when I'm done with the finished piece, as well as it allows me to work faster because I'm drying the layers of paint in between. So you can see I wet the paper, then I'm using random colors, some browns and greens, just to get a variation of colors for the background. And you can see I'm just working from section to section, drying my layers in between. At this stage, I'm not really wanting it to be very detailed at the back. The entire back is blurred out in the reference photo that I'm using. I'm not copying the colors exactly as a reference photo, because it is my representation of that reference photo. So I want the backgrounds just to be an indication of grass and trees and some sort of foliage in the background, but I'm not really focusing on it. The focal point is on the bird itself, the owl itself. So the owl we're going to be doing in the Procolour color pencils. You could use any color pencils that you have. The Procolour pencils, this paper is really smooth. It's actually very smooth. The hot press paper that I usually use for color pencils has a bit of tooth, but it is smooth because it's hot pressed, but it's able to take a lot of layers of pencil. However, with this paper, I'm limited by the number of layers of pencil I can use, and I usually use a lot of layers of pencil. So that's one thing to remember. If using this paper for color pencils, you need to have fewer layers. If you're thinking of using maybe like 12-15 layers, you may have an issue if you press too hard with the pencil. You must try to keep a light hand, which will help you to apply more layers and get more layers onto your paper. The harder you press with the pencil, you're not going to get so many layers in it, and also it is a very, very smooth paper, so you're not going to have a lot of tooth that's going to grip a lot of pencil. So just bear that in mind when you are doing this illustration. That's why also this illustration wasn't as saturated as I wanted it to be, because it didn't have a lot of, I couldn't put as many layers as I usually put, but I was still able to represent the barn owl well enough that you can see it's a realistic looking barn owl, and you can see the feathers, the design of the feathers, the colors, the lengths of the different feathers on the barn owl. You can see all of those details. So just bear that in mind when you are doing an illustration with color pencils. Make sure the paper can take multiple layers, depending on how your approach is to color pencils. If you use fewer layers, you won't have an issue, but if you do want more layers, keep a light hand, and also don't press too hard on the paper, and then you can get more layers as you are layering in your different colors for your color pencils. So now you can see I started working on the face. I usually always start working on the eyes of the animal, and then I start working on the face. So you can see I'm starting to build up that shadow areas first using a lighter color, because I don't want to go in too dark, because this is color pencil. I work from light to dark, so we don't want it to be too dark. We can darken things up as we progress. So I start off with the lighter colors, and I'm getting all the areas for the different shapes of the feathers and the designs of the feathers. You can see on his top of his head, of this barn owl. There's little spots as well as some browns and some grays, and you can see I'm just depicting all the different sort of fluffy feathers, and the as I'm going to work down, you'll see on the wing there's going to be more details on the feathers, and also I'm going to create some shadows where the feathers are overlapping as well. So all of that is something to pay attention to when you are doing a drawing in any medium, but in color pencils you need to as well pay attention to that. Whether you're painting or you're working in pencil, you need to really study your reference photo, try to get as much of your details that you can find in your reference photo, try to depict that in your basically your rendering of that particular reference photo. So you can see now I'm working on the feathers on the wing, and I'm starting to add those little spots, and I'm working basically very light-handedly. I'm not pressing down very hard on the paper because I am going to come through and add more layers of pencil just to create those saturated colors of the feathers, and also the variation of the colors. There's a lot of different browns and some tan colors, some grays, some white, some beige colors. So there's a lot of different colors on this particular owl. So I want to really bring all of that together when I'm working on a piece like this. So just bear that in mind when you are working, that you need to work very slowly, take your time, study your reference photo, layer very lightly your colors so that you can get more applications of pencil on, and that will make it look more realistic. Okay, so there I just went and touched up certain areas on the background where it was right against the bird, where I did not paint in the background, just so that the bird doesn't have an outline of white around him. And I'm continuing to build up the layers of the feathers and some of those shadows between the feathers as they're overlaying. Now I'm working on the feet and the claws. So all the while I'm working on this piece, I'm really looking at my reference photo and really looking at the direction of the feathers, the colors on the feathers, the patterns on the feathers. So all of that's very important when you want to create a realistic or three-dimensional illustration or drawing. So now I'm working with the pencils over the branch or the little piece of wood that the bird is sitting on. I was really trying to get it to really not show a lot of the white of the paper, and I decided just to make sure that I don't have any of that white showing, I just went over with one layer of the Inktense just to get all that white covered up. And then I did try to use some odorless mineral spirits, which is what I usually use for color pencil to blend my pencils. But because I didn't have that many layers on this particular owl, I wasn't able to get, you have to have a lot of pigment down before you can use that, to the odorless mineral spirits, to get the effect of it blending well. So I didn't have a lot of layers down, so I had to just use color pencils to refine it. So I guess that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to like and share. Feel free to comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. Till the next one. Bye.